We are holding, yesterday we pulled up a little short. We are holding on 16b, Tezayin Amid Beis. We're holding by the words Toshma Dam Shenitma Vizarkai. Okay, so which is probably about 7-8 lines from the top, but we're going to move along a little quicker.
Which Tashma are you at?
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines, 8 lines times 9 lines from the top. That's where we left off yesterday.
But listen, what you need to do is to look in the art scroll to see which.
Oh, art scroll 1. Art scroll 1. The first art scroll.
B1, you mean 16B1?
16B1, correct.
Okay.
Right? And it's the, on the English side, it's the right column, top part of the right column. Okay?
Got it.
So this is the situation. And today we should be able to get all the way, pretty much catch up. Okay, if we motor along here a little bit. So here we go. We were talking about Rav. Rav said that as far as he's concerned, that their liquids do not become tamei. They remain tar. And in fact, when Rav Sharei Heyed Yosef ben Yoezer is Sereda, when Yosef ben Yoezer of Sereda testified, he said about Mashkin Beis HaMatbechaya and all the liquids of the butchering place in the Beis HaMikdash, Dachan Atahar. Rav said that means that he's tar completely. And we've been asking a million questions on that. And that's where we're up to. Tashma, right off the bat, here's the brisa. Dam, blood, shenitma, that gets tamei, v'zarkai, and anyways, the kohen throws it anyways. B'shoigei kurza, inadvertently, if he threw it inadvertently, we say, okay, after the fact, it's okay. The carbon is okay. B'mezid loy hurtza, but if he did it on purpose, it's not accepted. So what's going on? First of all, the question is obvious. The moment it said, dam shenitma, blood that got tamei. According to Rav, dam cannot get tamei because liquids do not get tamei midiaraisa. So what's going on over here? Now, by the way, when it says b'shoigei hurtza b'mezid loy hurtza, that doesn't mean exactly what it says. Because as we're about to learn, we're about to get introduced to the tzitz. The tzitz was the golden band that Aaron HaKohen put on its head. And on it said La Hashem. Okay? La Hashem Melech. It said La Hashem. This golden tzitz had the magical power, for lack of a better word, to be meratzeh, to make things good. That means it had, and we're going to see this in a second. It meant if things went no good with offerings, with the korbanos that were brought, somehow the tzitz said, no, don't worry about it, they're accepted. They're accepted. So over here, what it really means is b'shoigeg hurtza, meaning that you were allowed to eat the meat after it was slaughtered, after everything, all the avodas were done. Again, the avodas are shechita, slaughtering, kabbalah, capturing the blood, halicha, carrying the blood to the mizbeach, and zerika, spritzing the blood on the mizbeach, which then allowed the meat to be eaten. Here we're saying b'mezid lo hurtza, that if it b'mezid, even though the tzitz is going to be meratzeh, means the tzitz is going to say, okay, it's okay, you don't have to bring another carbon, it's accepted. The meat, however, midrabanan, rabbinically, would not be allowed to eat. But anyway, so here's the problem. It clearly says dam shenitma, dam that gets tamei. So clearly this means that minatayra dam could get tamei. Liquids could get tamei, which means that Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer ish Sereda, when he was saying ala mashkin beis hamatbechaya, on the liquids of the butchering place, he obviously was only talking about that they can no longer convey tumah. They can no longer pass it down the road. They cannot be metamei, but they themselves could be tamei. So what's going on here? This seems to be questionable on what Rav says, that Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer was testifying that there's no such thing biblically. Says the Gemara, you're right. This baraisa is not going according to Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer. Midrabanan, this baraisa is saying that beverages, liquids, only become tamei midurabanan. Udoloi ki Yosef ben Yezer is sereda, and this price is not going to Yosef is sereda, who says rabbinical decrees do not apply in the Beis Hamikdash. If rabbinical decrees don't apply in the Beis Hamikdash, that's why everything is tahar in the Beis Hamikdash rabbinically. And this Brisa says no, rabbinically even the blood could become tamei in the Beis Hamikdash. So okay, you can say that this Brisa does not follow the way Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer Ish Sereda says. And the next Brisa is going to be exactly the same idea. Toshma. Alma hatzitz meratza. What does the tzitz, the golden band that Aaron HaKohen wore, what does it affect? How does it affect acceptance? Meratza means it affects acceptance. There was a mess up, but because the tzitz is around, that has the power to say, and now it's okay. So says the Brisa, right off the bat, we're going to have our problem. Al hadam, on the blood, the ala basar, on the meat, the ala chelev, the sacrificial parts, shenitmo, that become tamei. Right there again. It just said the dam, one of the liquids, became tamei. Once again, we run into the same problem according to those that seem to be saying, Rav, that seems to be saying there's no such thing as liquids becoming tamei min HaTorah, biblically speaking. Bein b'shoigeg, bein b'mezid, bein ba'oinus, bein b'rotzes, which whether inadvertently b'shoigeg or b'mezid deliberately, bein ba'oinus is a mishap. That means it was unavoidable. Oy b'rotzen or willingly. Willingly, b'rotzen and mezid are actually the same thing. It's just a language that fits better. Mezid fits the better with the word shoigeg, and the word rotzen willingly fits together with oinus, which means unwillingly. It's a complete mishap, but they mean the same thing. And the Gemara goes further: bein b'yochid, bein b'tzibur. Whether the offering, the sacrificial offering, was brought by an individual or it was brought communally. Either way, the Bryce is teaching us that mashkin, in this case the dam, the blood, could become tamei. Clearly, then, if it become tamei, even in the base of bit b'chai, even in the butcher's place, it could become tamei. So, therefore, Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer is only talking about when he says dochan, that it's tahar, meaning that they no longer could convey tumah to other things. They can't convey further down the line, but it itself becomes tamei. And the Rabbanan, and so it says the Gemara. So then we have a problem because Rab said that's not what it means. It means that all liquids biblically do not become tamei; they always remain tahar. And for the Gemara, midrabanan. So once again, this Baraisa is midrabanan, that the beverages are only tamei midrabanan. Udaloi ki Yosef ben Yezer Ish Sereda, because here we're saying that the Rabbanan's decree even applies in the Beis Hamikdash. And of course, if Yosef ben Yezer says absolutely not, the Gezeris Rabbanim do not apply in the Beis Hamikdash. Another one, Toshma. So now we got like this. Aaron HaKohen has on his forehead the tzitz, this golden band. And the pasuk says, V'nosa Aaron es avoin hakadoshim. And Aaron shall carry, Nosa shall bear the averis of the kachin, the sin of the sacred offerings. V'chi ezer avoin hu noisid. Now exactly which sin, which avera is he bearing by virtue of wearing the tzitz? Im avoin pigel, if we're talking about pigel, which again, like we said yesterday, which is a machshava zorius, while the sacrifice is being slaughtered, the kohen has in mind that he's going to eat it after the allotted time frame that the Torah gives that you could eat. Let's say it's a day and a night, and he says, I'm going to eat it the next day. So we said that's pigel. Well, over there, the pasuk says beferish, says clearly, Hare kvar nema lo yerotze. It shall not be accepted. So by pigel, it shall not be accepted, which teaches us, of course, that the offering is invalid, which means that the tzitz does not help it. Im avoy noiser, if it's the case of the avera of noiser, what's noiser? That's the actual leaving over of meat after the time frame. If the time frame is a day and a night, and you leave it over after the night, then it no longer could be offered, it needs to be burnt. It shall not be considered, which teaches us also that it's invalid and the tzitz does not help. So what is the tzitz coming to help? When it says that Aaron shall bear the sin of the sacred offerings. Which sacred offerings are we talking about? Pigol does not get accepted. The pasuk says it beferish lo yirotze. Noisa doesn't get accepted. The pasuk says lo yichoshev. So therefore, which one is the tzitz coming to help? What exactly is it? Where is its magical properties? Where does it help? So the Gemara says, we're only left with we're only left with the sin of tumah, bringing something up onto the mizbeach in a state of tumah, and therefore shuhut. Why tumah? Why does the tzitz work for tumah? Shuhutra bichlalo b'tzibur, because there's an exception with regard to when the entire community has tameh. There is a great rule that we learned actually out of the Korban Pesach, because the Korban Pesach has to be brought bismano, in its time and no other time. The rule is, if the whole community is tameh, there is no tameh. If all the kahanim are tameh, the kahanim are not tameh. In other words, if you're everywhere, you're nowhere. It's called Tumah Hutra B'tzibur. Tumah becomes Hutra, becomes okay, B'tzibur, when the entire community has it. So just to point out where this becomes, this week, Hanukkah is coming. Everybody knows about the miracle of Hanukkah, right? That they could not find tahar, uncontaminated oil. There was only tameh oil. There was only contaminated oil in the Beis Hamikdash. And it took 8 days to process it, right? They only found one small container of uncontaminated oil, and that was the miracle that it burned for 8 days. Comes the Pnei Yeshuans and asks, we didn't have to even have the entire miracle, because regarding the rules of Tameh, the rule is Tumah Hutra B'tzibur. Tumah becomes okay if the entire community is Tameh. In this case, all the oil was Tameh. When all the oil is Tameh, none of the oil is Tameh. They could have gone ahead and burnt the oil on the Mizbeach. And so he has a whole long thing, which I'm not getting into, as to why the miracle was even needed, when halakhically speaking, there was no need for the miracle of Hanukkah, because of this rule of Tumah Hutra B'tzibur. It's one of the more famous Pnei Yeshuas in Masechtas Shabbos, in the second paragraph of Masechtas Shabbos, where they discuss Hanukkah. But anyways, back to our Gemara. Shuhutra b'chal b'tzibur, my lab tumas dam. So what are we talking about? That the tzitz comes to deal with the idea of tumah, of blood that is being brought for the offerings. That the blood is tameh and the tzitz is miratzeh. It makes it okay. So you see that liquids could become tameh. Amara papa loy. No, we're not talking about the blood that became tameh. That is not what the tzitz comes to miratzeh to bear. It's talking about tumas kimotzim, the tumah of the kemitza. There were something called the mincha offerings, which were offerings of flour, kimotzim, kemach, flour, which were either fried or baked. Either way, flour is a food. It's not a liquid. And everybody agrees that foods, of course, can become tameh. So therefore, the tzitz comes to do it for tameh. Yes, Jeff. Sure. Jeff, you have a question?
Oh, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
No, you're good? Okay. So now we're up to finally, the Gemara is getting a little tired of dealing with Rav. Tashma, it's up to the last one. So now here's the situation. After the Churban Bayis Rishon and the story of Purim, they all started coming back up. They started coming back up to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. So Chagai Hanavi said, you know what, I better test the Kahanim to see if they remember the rules of Tumah and Tahara. Do they remember the rules of purity, uncontamination, and contamination? So he started asking them questions. And the question he asked them, If a person carried contaminated flesh in the corner of his garment, which seems to mean that in fact what he had in the corner of his garment is a sheretz, one of the creepy, crawly things that are an av hatuma, that make things into a rishon l'tuma, into the things that are avatuma, that what if they touch something turns the thing that they touch into a first level tuma. Vinoga, and with this corner, he was touched. He touched the bread, Biel hanozid, the stew, Biel hayayin, and the wine, Biel hashemen, and oil, Biel kol hamachal, and everything there is to eat. In other words, the bread touched the garment touched the bread touched the stew touched the wine touched the oil. Hey, hayigdash, is it contaminated? V'yanu kahanim v'yayimru loy, and the kahanim said no, that the last thing, the oil is not tameh. The holy oil is not tameh. This is all holy stuff in the Beis Hamikdash. So again, he asks, if the corner of the garment touches the bread, and again, we're dealing with all holy stuff in the Beis Hamikdash, and the bread touches the stew, and the stew touches the wine, and the wine touches the oil, it sounds like Chagadia, and it all becomes, and it does the last level, the oil, does it become tummy? And the Kohanim said no. So now we're on the daf Yud Zayin. Amar Aleph. Va'amar Rav, and Rav said, Ish Tibash Kahani. The Kahanim erred. They made a mistake. They said that the oil, the last level of the oil, right, was tahar. And Rav said they made a mistake because, in fact, the oil was a revi l'tumah, was a fourth level tumah. And we have a rule that kodshim, holy things, can go all the way down to a fourth level. So figure it out. Because the bread was, the garment was an avatuma. The bread, it touched the bread, which became a first level. The bread touched the stew, which became a second level. The stew touched the wine, that became a third level. And the wine touched the oil, which became a fourth level, a revi. So it looks like over here, essentially, that the Kahanim over there did not know about, they had forgotten that there is such a thing as a fourth level of Tumah when it comes to Kachim, to holy things. Of course, the question over here is, you just said over here, let's see what we got here. We had Yayin and Shemen, wine and oil. These are liquids. According to Rav, liquids can never become Tomei Minat Torah. There is no, liquids are always Tahar. And that's what Rav Yossi ben Yezer Ish Sereda said in the butchering place. They're tar completely. So how could Rav Chagai even be asking these questions? There is nothing going on. The yayin, the wine, and the shemen and the oil are tahar. And yet here Rav says, Ishta bishkada. The Kahana made a mistake. The same Rav that said that there's no such thing as tomei by liquids now says the Kahana made a mistake. And that they should have known that the oil is a revi, which means, of course, that there is tamei. Says, and for the Gemara, midu the tamel Rav. This whole question is only according to Rav. Rav, where did Yosef ben Yezer say his words? Sharei Hayid Yosef ben Yezer Yisrael. He testified. Yosef ben Yezer Yisrael testified about hamashkim beis hamat v'chaya, regarding the liquids that were in the butchering place. Dochan, that they're pure. What are we talking about over here? Here, Rav mashke beis mat v'chaya tani. Rav taught Yosef ben Yezer specifically in the butcher's place, in the temple, in the Beis Hamikdash, which only had two kind of liquids, had dam, blood, and had water, mayim, to wash off the blood. Avo mashke bein mad bichaya mitame. But the mashke that belongs on the altar, that belongs on the mizbeach, on the tabernacle, which happens to have two more. Yes, on the tabernacle. Obviously, there was blood and there was water when they washed it off, but there was also wine and there was also oil. The oil came along with the minchas, with the carbon minchas, and the wine libations happened on Sukkot. There was Nisuch Hamayim and Nisuch Hayayin. There was Nisuch Hayayin all year long and Nisuch Hamayim on Sukkot. So that the Mizbeach had on it not just blood and water, but it also had on it wine and oil. Yosef ben Yezer is only talking about the liquids that have to do with the base of the butchering place, the base of Mikdash of the base of Mikdash. But regarding the Mizbeach, he never spoke about the Mizbeach. So those liquids, the yayin and the shemen, the wine and the oil, those two are susceptible to tumah. So the Gemara says, okay, I'm leaving Rav alone. That's it. We can't figure out. I got every question I have, Rav's got an answer for. So now the Gemara is about to go into the story that we just had. Chagai asked the Kahanim this case of the garment touching the bread touching the stew touching the wine touching the oil. And he asked them, what's the level of the oil? And they said tar, and Rab said they made a mistake. It was a revi. And Shmuel said they did. And as we're going to see, Shmuel holds that they didn't make a mistake. So now the Gemara gets into that case. Gufo, that text itself. Rab kahani that the Kahanim erred. Shmuel kahani, the Kahanim did not make a mistake. Rab kahane that the Kahanim made a mistake. Revi ba'kodesh ba'yiminayu. Chage was asking about a fourth level of kodesh, of holiness. Again, the garment was the garment. The garment touched the bread touched the stew touched the wine, and the wine touched the oil. The oil therefore was on level 4. They apparently did not forgot that there was such a thing as a level 4 tumah when it comes to kosher. The Kahanim did not make a mistake, because in fact Chage was asking them a tricky question about a chamishi ba'kodesh ba'yiminei. They answered correctly, because in fact, if you read the words correctly, as the Gemara is going to say, what Shmuel says is the case. The sheretz, the creepy crawly thing, was an avatuma. It touched the garment. The garment therefore became a first. The bread therefore became a second. The stew became a third. The wine became a fourth. Therefore, the oil became a fifth. And we know there's no such thing as a fifth level tumah at all. So they answered correctly. Tar, everything was good. But break the Gemara, Bishlema L'Rav, who said that that the oil is a fourth level. The Hainu Diksiv Arba, that's why 4 things are mentioned. Lechem v'nozid v'yayin v'shemen. Bread, stew, wine, and oil. Because he was saying that the garment means that the sheretz was in the garment, and the creepy crawly thing actually touched the bread. So that's how that started. Where does he see that the question went down to a 5th level? And he answers, does it say the garment's corner touched the bread, which would mean that the sheretz itself that was in the corner of the garment touched? No, it says vinoga b'chiznofai. It's written, with his garment's corner he touched the bread. That he touched the bread with which was touched by his sheretz. In other words, the sheretz, the avatoma, touched the garment. The garment is now a first level tumah. The garment then touched the bread, making it the bread second. The bread touched the stew, making it a third. The stew touched the wine, making it a fourth. And the wine touched the oil, making it a 5th, and there is no such thing as a 5th level. So now we've got 2 things. Either Chagai asked them about a 4th level, the way Rav learns it up, and they made a mistake, or Shmuel says, no, he asked them about a 5th level, and they were exactly correct. So now the Gemara asks a bunch of questions. It says, let's see who got the story right. Toshma, we got a problem with Rav. because if you continue on the conversation between Chagai Hanavi and the Kahanim, Chagai said, V'yomer Chagai, and Chagai said, Im yoga tumei nefesh b'chol leila. If one who is tumei from a corpse, so if you remember, a corpse is an avi avois atuma, a grandfather of all tumas, and a person who touches an avi avois atuma becomes an avatuma, doesn't fall to a first. Something that touches a corpse goes from the corpse being the father, the grandfather of all tumas. Something that touches a corpse becomes a avatuma, becomes a father of tumah that then can keep going to first, second, third, and fourth. Says like this: Im yoga timnei nefesh b'chol leila. If a corpse touched all of these, a tumah person touched the bread, which then touched the stew, which touches the wine, which touches the oil. Again, the wine and the oil are of kodesh. Hitma, will it be tamei? V'yanu hakahanim v'yamru yitma, yes, they are tamei. B'shleima l'shmuel mehacha loitis bashis. Very good for Shmuel, because here we see that they did not err. Because in the case of a corpse tamei, what happens? The corpse is an avi avois atuma. Therefore, the person that touched the corpse is an avatuma. And then if you work your way down, he touched the bread, touched the stew, touched the yayin, touched the oil. The oil is on a fourth level because we started all the way up on avi avois atuma, all the way up. El l'rav ma'ishna hachadish ba'ish. Why do you say over here by the sherets that they erred? Ma'ishna hasam deloitis ba'ish. Why over here by the corpse they did not err? In other words, Shmuel says the Kahanim knew the halachas. They didn't make a mistake by the garment, because there the question was a fifth level question. They didn't make the mistake over here by the next question when he asked them about an avi avois atuma. Chagay asked him, did they know about the idea of a grandfather of all the tumas? Because the Kahanim knew the halachas. How come, according to Rav, regarding avi avois atuma, the grandfather of all the tumas, the Kahanim knew, but somehow about the reveal of tumah they forgot. It's not consistent. Either they knew stuff or they didn't know. Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Abua, Bekiyan hein betumas meis. They were knowledgeable in corpse tumah. They certainly knew. Everybody knows a corpse is tamei, and therefore they knew that there was such a thing as an avi avois tumah. Ein bekiyan hein betumas sheretz, but they were not knowledgeable in the laws of tumas sheretz. They understood that tumas. They understand that the corpse tumah. The corpse tumah is a powerful tumah. Everybody knows as soon as, unfortunately, somebody passes away, the people around become tamei. So they understood that corpse tumah has the power to bring things down all the way to a fourth level, to a reveal tumah by kodshim, a fourth level by holiness. But they did not know that a sheretz has the same kind of power as a person who touched a mace. They understood a person who touches a mace has a very powerful tamei, and so he's still, the tamei that he conveys can be conveyed all the way down to a fourth level. But the sheretz, which is a creepy, crawly thing, which you see all the time, you see all our little salamanders and all the little lizards running around all the time here in Florida, and there are dead ones all over the place. And if you touch them when you're walking along and you touch it and the whole thing, they didn't realize it was so powerful. That it too, because it too is also an avatuma, has the power to convey all the way down to fourth level tumah for kachim. They didn't realize that. So Rab says it's possible. They knew the halachas with regard to a corpse. They didn't know the halachas with regard to a sheretz. So now the Gemara is going to ask on Shmuel. Toshma, how did Shmuel say that everything was great? But Chagai said, Yan I spoke up, and he said, so all their work that they're going to do is tamei. At the end of it, all of it, Chagai said, everything you guys touch and everything you do is tamei. Bishleim l'rav, that everything at the end of the day was ruled to be tamei. How did it sieve tamei? Shmuel amai tame. Shmuel says they knew the halachas. So Shmuel says, no, you're reading the words all wrong. Ismui kamisame. Chage was speaking in wonderment. Since they're so proficient in the laws of holiness, of taharis, of holiness, is their work, is their handiwork and what they offer going to be tame? No, of course not. Right? It was a way of speaking praise to Klal Yisrael. But the Gemara says that can't be. And it says, and so is all their handiwork tame, which seems to say straight out that everything that they did was tame. So Amar Zutvi, Temer Rabashi, B'toich shekilkulu es masayim, since they corrupted their deeds, Mala aleim akosuv ki ilu hikru b'toma. The pasuk, the scripture came to tell us as if the offerings that they brought were brought in Tumah. The Mefarshim explained that they were not talking about the Kahanim of that time. Of course, what they brought and everything else was Tahar. But since Chagai was saying a Nevuah, prophecy, that unfortunately the behavior of the Jews during the Second Temple was going to go downhill. And in going downhill, Chagai, along with Yeshaya, Isaiah, and along Yirmiyah, and all the ones kept saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need your offerings. He wants you to behave. They're saying your offerings that you think you're bringing because you feel so good that you're so holy and so orthodox, right? But in your own personal lives and all that, you're not doing right by other people, right? God says, your offerings to me are like Tomei, are like contaminated offerings. If you look in Tehillim, in Kapitel, what he called in Kapitel Nun Aleph, the 51st Psalms, which is the Psalms of Tshuva, of repentance, David says, Leiv nishpa v'nidke lekim le'sivza, a broken-hearted heart, that kind of offering God never rejects. He said, because that, of course, and he says before that, but the other kind of, again, we have to remember, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need any kabbalas. He doesn't need any sacrifices. We need to bring the sacrifices with the idea that really we're supposed to be the sacrifices because we're the one who sin and we're the one who do no good. And that the animals that we're bringing are in place of ourselves. That's really the underlying understanding of kabbalas. And the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim explains it, of course, that the idea of kabbalas was really to offset idol worship, which of course was all filled with sacrifices. So we took the sacrifices that were being used essentially for idol worship and we applied it to the holy with the clear understanding that if you don't understand when you're bringing it, that it's really you who are supposed to be the carbon, you're supposed to be the sacrifice because you blew it, and you're bringing these karbanis, and by that you bring yourself to a level of repentance. That, of course, is the underlying purpose of all the karbanis. So now, back to the question. Gufa. Rav Tani b'mashke beis matbechai. He explains Yosef ben Ye'ezer, who said that the liquids of the butchering place are tahar, do not contract tumah, right? But that the liquids that are on the mizbeach, in other words, the wine and the oil, do contract. They do get tumah. The Levi tana mashkin bei matbechei, and right, but Levi taught that no, even the beverages of the altar, even the liquids of the mizbeach, that means even the wine and the oil, it doesn't matter. All of those are tahar. They do not become tameh. So Zakti Gemara, Lil Levi, who just said there is no such thing as minat Torah, biblically speaking, as liquids becoming tameh, whether it's water and dam that's in the butchering place, whether it's the oil and the shemen on the mizbeach, they do not become tameh in the mizbeach, in the Beis Hamikdash. Lil Levi, hanicha, this is all good. He's related to Shmuel, that he holds like Shmuel, the Amar that Shmuel explains Yosef ben Ye'ezer meant, that the temples, when he says that they're dochyan, it means that they can no longer convey. They do not convey tumah. that the liquids in the butchering place and now and even on the Mizbeach, intrinsically on themselves could become contaminated. But when Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer said that they're tar, it means that they do not have the power, they will not convey tumah further down the line. That they're pure, they're tahar in the sense that they will not contaminate other things. But their own tumah they certainly can have. So it even means that even the wine and the oil, right, are covered under Yosef ben Yezer's things, which means they themselves can become tameh, but they do not convey tameh. We then can find the case, the nugget kulib rishon. We can explain Chagai's case where on the list they touched the rishon. That means that when the person who was a rishon, the person who was touched by an avatuma, and he's now a rishon, would then touch the bread, the stew, the wine, the oil, right? So therefore they answered this. They said, of course, it would become tummy because when a rishon touches all this stuff, because even the liquids in the Beis Hamikdash can intrinsically become tamei. What Yosef ben Yezer was talking about was that they know they cannot convey out tumah to other things. Well, in that case, that would be not just the water and the blood in the butchering area, but even the wine and the oil on the Mizbeach will not convey. However, Elai Sabalei Karav, the Omad Dochan Mamish, that everything is literally true, they're literally tar. That means, according to Rav, not only can they not convey tumah, but they themselves cannot become tamei at all. Hey, Chimishkachas law, how do you ever find a case of Chagai where the oil is tamei? So we say, Al-Kocha Kishmuel Svirle, that Levi clearly holds like Shmuel, and that Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer is only excluding the liquids of the temple from conveying tumah further down the line. But they themselves become tamei, which makes it possible for an oil to be on a fourth level. Good. Ula Shmuel, who says that they did not, who explained Chagai's first case, that the first case when the Kahanim said that the oil is tar, is pure, uncontaminated, because the oil was on a fifth level. If you work out the case will turn out that the oil is on a fifth level. There's no such thing as a fifth level tumah. This is all good if he holds like Rav, the Tani that learns Mashbe Beis Yosef ben Yezer, when he said that the beverages of the Beis Hamikdash are tar, are not tamei. This is only talking about the beverages of the butchering place, the blood and the water. But the liquids of the Mizbeach, of the altar, that means the wine and the oil, not only are tamei for themselves, but they can go ahead and convey tamei down the line. The liquids of the altar do have the power because of the kedusha, of the holiness of the Mizbeach. They have the power, if they become tamei, to convey tamei further down the line. So then Shmuel understands the question that the Kahanim did not err, because Revi who delay of it chamishi, because the rule is that a Revi of Kodesh, a Revi of oil of Kodesh cannot make a chamishi because there is no fifth level. Hashlishi of a Revi, but a third level of oil can make a fourth level, right? So this is the only basis saying the Kahanim did not err, is that he asked them whether Kodesh can make a chamishi. L.E. because in this case, oil could become tamei. So therefore, the question of Chagai makes sense because oil is the liquids of the Mizbeach, and the Mizbeach, because it's so holy, if its liquids, meaning the wine and the oil, become tamei, they have the power to convey tumah further down the line. So now Chagai can ask his question: oil that become tamei, can it convey tumah down the line? And they answered, yes, they can convey down the line. If it's on a shalishi, it can make a reveal, a kodesh. It can make something kodesh into its fourth level. But a fourth level cannot make a fifth level. But if Shmuel held like Levi, the Tani Mashku Ben Mad Bechaya, that Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer is even talking about the liquids of the mizbeach of the and even those liquids, the wine and the oil, do not convey down the line my Yeravi Deloyavet Chamishi. Then why did he have to bring a case of oil that is on a fourth level? And to teach them the idea that there is no such thing as a fifth level, because if you go according to Levi says liquids, whether they're the dam, whether they're the water, whether they're the oil, or whether they're the wine, they all cannot convey, they do not convey tumah to anything else if in the base of English. If that's the case, even if the oil is tameh, it cannot convey. It cannot convey down. So why do I have to start with a fourth level to teach us that there is no such thing as a fifth level? Teach the better law. Oil that's on a second level and a third level that touches something else cannot convey down, even though those levels exist. It's a bigger chiddush. It's a bigger learning to say the levels exist of tameh, but guess what? The oil and the wine cannot convey down. That's what he should have taught. So says the Gemara, you're right. That would have been a better thing. He must be learning the way Rav is teaching Yosef ben Yehuda's testimony as only referring to the base of mitpachaya, only talking about the butcher's place and not the blood and the water of the mizbeach. So now the Gemara says, Tani kabos the Rav, Tani kabos the Levi. Tani kabos the Levi, Hadab Levi, who said, remember that none of them, all four, the water, the dam, the wine, the oil cannot convey tumah further. Which are all considered the liquids of the mizbeach, of the altar, because he said yayin, wine, and oil are only on the tabernacle. But there also happens to be blood and water on the tabernacle. It's true. They're also in the butchering area, but they're also on the mizbeach. He says all four are mashkamei madbechaya. They all are considered all four the liquids of the altar of the mizbeach. Shenitnu bifnim v'oitziim l'chutz, which became tamei on the inside in the temple's azara, in the temple's courtyard, and they took it out tahirin atar. Why? Because any liquid inside the Beis Hamikdash in reality cannot become tamei. So if you take it outside, no biggie, right? It's still tar. Nitmu b'chutz, but what about if all four of these become tamei outside the Beis Hamikdash? V'nichnis b'fnim, and then you bring it inside, the Beis Hamikdash, tamein. They are tamei, right? This therefore follows Levi's version of Yosef ben Yehuda that says all the liquids of the mizbeach are precluded from tumah. They don't become tamei. So says the Gemara, Eini, is it true that things that become tamei on the inside of the Beis Hamikdash and then are taken out remain tahar because inside they never became tamei anyways? They never became tamei anyways because Levi says liquids don't become tamei in the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, the liquids of the mizbeach, of the tabernacle, we say that they're tahar only in their place, meaning in the Beis Hamikdash, in the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. This means simply to exclude that if they were inside and then went outside, well, if they go outside, it seems to me that they could become tamei. They could become tamei. They get where if they were contaminated on the inside and they remain inside the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, they stay tar. But the moment you take it out of the Beis Hamikdash, they revert to tamei. They become tamei because essentially they really are tamei. So why in the world? What he called it? That's what it seems to say over here. And for the Gemara, just the opposite. They're talking about where these liquids become tamei on the outside, and then you brought them in. You might think since I brought them into the Beis Hamikdash, they automatically become tahar. The answer is no. If they start off life as a tamei, contaminated, and you bring it into the Beis Hamikdash, the power of the Beis Hamikdash does not make them into tahar. So says the Gemara, it says in their place, right, which implies that if they're removed from the courtyard, they do become tamei. That means if they become tamei in the Beis Hamikdash, so they can't become, we say they remain tahar, but only in their place, which seems to say that when I step out, automatically they then take on the tamei. It was said that the liquids of the Mizbeach, of the tabernacle, are tahor only in a case where they're contaminated in their place. Means to say, it means where they're in their place, they become tamei. In other words, that is exactly what Levi meant to say. It was said that is that only when they are in the Beis Hamikdash, they stay tahar. But you're right. If they walk out of the Beis Hamikdash, I agree with you, they then take on the tamei, because in reality they are tamei. They became tamei in the Beis Hamikdash. But we have a rule in the Beis Hamikdash, we don't recognize the tamei. We say they remain tar as long as they stay in the Beis Hamikdash. Tanya Kabasi the Rav, we have a brayso that goes according to Rav. Hadam v'hamayim, the blood and the water, mashknei beis matbechaya, which are the liquids of the butchering place. Shenitmu, if they become contaminated. Bein bekalim, whether they are in a utensil. Bein bekarka, or they're laying on the ground. Tahirim their tar. And the Gemara will explain what's the difference. Amid Beis. Here we go. I know it's the time, but we're just going to go just a little further, so we get a little further down towards the end of the Amid. Rab Shimon Oimeh, Bekalim Tamein, beverages contained in a vessel are Tamei. Bekarka Tahirim, if they're on the ground, they remain tar. Okay, so that the Gemara now is going to explain it. Amar Papa. Afil Lamandi Amar Tumas Mashkin Diaraisa, even according to the one who said that Tuma, that liquids could become biblically tamei mashke beisavet chaya hilchas gemirle, concerning the liquids of the butchering place. It's an halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It's not clear. It's one of those things that Moshe brought down from the mountain that says that the beverages, the liquids, the dam and the mayim, the blood and the water of the butchering place in the Beis Hamikdash do not become tamei. So now the Gemara says, Amalei Rav Huna bereided Rav Nosson l'Rav Papa v'lahad the Amar Rabbi Elazar. But this is Rabbi Elazar said, Ain't tuma l'mashkim kol ikka, that there is no such thing min ha'Torah of tuma, of contamination by liquids, right? Teda. And how do you know this is true? Said Rabbi Elazar, Sharei Heid Yosef ben Yezer Ish Sereda Mashke Beis Matbechaya Dochyan, because Yosef ben Yezer Ish Sereda testified regarding the liquids, the blood and the water of the Beis HaMitbechaya, that they are tahar. And Rabbi Elazar says, if minat Torah, if liquids minat Torah, biblically, would be a tamei, could become tamei, then why would the liquids of the butchering place be any different? The fact that the places of the butchering place are tar means that all liquids are tar, period, right? But here's the problem. But if this rule that liquids are tar and cannot become contaminated is an halacha l'Moshe Sinai, not specifically written in the Torah Kedosh, in the Holy Torah, mi gamin and lay, how could you learn with the rule of an halacha l'Moshe Sinai, of a rule that Moses brought down from the Mount, is that it's specific to its case. Since it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that the blood and the water of the Beis Hamikdash, of the butchering place, are tar, that is only specific to the butchering place. How does Rabbi Elazar learn it out to all liquids, that all liquids are tar midiaraisa, that all liquids biblically cannot become tamei? Amalei Rabbeinu l'Ravashi v'ha Rabbi Shimon the Amar Tumas Mashkin diaraisa. But what about Rabbi Shimon, who says that just the opposite, that liquids have the capacity to become tamei biblically? The Tanya, Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Shimon say, Lekalim Tahirim, regarding utensils that might have been touched. It's uncertain whether they've been touched by tomadical liquids, by liquids that might be tame. The rule is we say they're tahar, out of doubt, because we say that this is only rabbinic in nature and subject to rabbanon lekula. La'oichlin tameim, but regarding foods, if we're not sure if the food touched liquids that might have been tamei or not, we say that the food itself is also tamei, because that's a diaraisa, that's biblical, and subject to diaraisa lechumra. All uncertainty is biblical. We're strict. V'hacha kama Rab Shimon, and here's what Rab Shimon was saying: b'kelim b'tameim b'karka toirim, that liquids of the butchering place that were contaminated, were contained in a vessel, they are tamei. But if they're on the ground, but if it's an halacha l'moishim in Sinai, that the liquids of the butchering place are exempt from the rule. Rab Shimon is the one that says liquids are tamei midiaraisa. Liquids could become tamei biblically. And Rab Shimon also says that the liquids of the beis hamitbachai, of the butchering place, are somewhat outside that rule. That if they're in a utensil, they become tamei, and if they're not in a utensil, they're on the floor, they don't become tamei. But here's the thing: if it's halacha l'moishim in Sinai, that the butchering places liquids are exempt from the rule, that tamei, that liquids could become tamei biblically, then what's the difference whether it's in a vessel or on the ground? All the liquids should be exempt, and the liquids of the beis b'chaim completely, not just the liquids that are on the ground, but even the liquids that are on in a keli should remain tahar. And for the Gemara kasha, it's a kasha. And again, Charlie, it's a kasha because there's different ways of learning this up. You don't have to say that everybody agrees with Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon is a das yochid, that he says the liquids are biblically tamei. Second, he makes this difference between the karka, the ground, and the vessels. Not everybody else makes it. So there's ways of getting out of it. But again, it's hard because getting Rab Shimon out of this problem is going to be somewhat difficult. So that's why.
Because obviously they're taking him seriously.
They're taking him seriously, exactly. Even though the halacha doesn't actually go to by.
I know, but I'm just saying, otherwise they wouldn't say kasha.
Right, that's why it says kasha. It's definitely a kasha. Again, you can twist out of it, but we don't want to go there. So now the Gemara goes a little further. If you guys don't mind, if we just go a little further, just so we move down the daf just a little bit. All right, we're almost done. I thought we would get all the way to the bottom, but we got stuck. Amar Papa, Hadi Amar Bekarka Tahirim. This what Reb Shimon said, that if the liquids, the blood of the water of the butchering place were on the ground, they remain tar. Loi shanu. He's not talking about everything. He's not talking about both the blood and the water. Loi shanu elamayim. He's only talking about water. Avol dam loi, but dam no. The dam is not even tar, even if it's on the ground. Water, if it's on the ground, remains tar, according to Reb Shimon, in the butchering place. But the blood, if it's on the ground, even in the butchering place, does not remain tahar if it gets tahar. Umayim nami, and even the water that's on the ground, lo yaminan eladahavi revius. It's only because it has a revius, because a revius is the smallest amount that could be used for a mikvah to purify things. Dahave letabel beich mechotin vitzinoiros. Because this measure of water, this little bit measure of water, is fit to immerse needles and spinning forks, tiny little needles. So therefore, it's a mikvah. Biblically speaking, it's a mikvah. Is tamei. But if it's not a revius, then even the water that falls on the floor in the beis hamitbachai, in the beis hamikdash, according to Rav Shimon, is susceptible to tamei. Okay. Amamar. Truth of the matter is, we could. But let's go just a little further. Amamar. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. L'chol tomei. This is said. This is what we got before. In regard to anything that might have been touched, it's uncertain, by tomei liquids, by tomei beverages. The rule is that they're tomei out of doubt, which seems to say, because tomei liquids could become tomei biblically, and now it's a doubt whether they are tomei, and we're not, and what it called? And no, I'm sorry, tomei liquids are tomei midiaraisa, are tomei biblically, and we're in doubt whether these liquids that are tomei touch something or not. So therefore, it's an uncertainty in a biblical law, and the rule is safik di'oraisa l'chumra. So the Gemara says, "Lemema the Savar Rabbi Yehuda tumas mashkim l'tamei tumas kalim di'oraisa," that the capacity of tumas of liquids that are tomei have the capacity to then convey tumah to kalim, to utensils, and that's biblical on a biblical level. V'atanan, we learned in a Mishnah. This Mishnah is in kalim. It goes like this: Kol kalim, all utensils sheyesh lehem achoranim v'soich, that have an exterior and an interior, meaning it has a base kibble. What does that mean? That they're concaved. In other words, you can put things inside it. It's like a kos that we use on Shabbos. It's not a flat plate. It's not flat. It's a kos, but it's not just a kos. Listen to these cases here. Kigoin hakorim, pillows. Since you can push a pillow and make a hollow in a pillow is considered something that has an exterior and an interior. Cushions, the same thing. That's vahakosoisos, cushions. It sounds exactly like cushions. Vahasakin, you can figure out what that is. Sacks. Vahamirtsufin, and leather bags. Because they're all soft, and therefore you can make, essentially you can punch into it a hollow. Nitba toichoi, nitba gaboy. If the inside gets contaminated, the outside is contaminated. If the inside is contaminated, it flows over to the outside. But nitba gaboy, but if the outside gets contaminated, if something touched the outside, if let's say a sheretz, again, a creepy crawly thing only touched the outside, nitma gaboy, nitma toiche, the inside does not get tameh. Omer Rabbi Yehuda, and I'm not going into it because eventually we're going to get to these things that the Gemara is going to, in other places, are going to spend plenty of time explaining the inside and the outside. Ear rights, believe it or not, that's really what's going on here. It's a question of how ear rights work and all that. Concerning a case that was contaminated by beverages, by liquids, but if any of these utensils were contaminated by a sheretz, then the rule changes. So this that we said before, that if the outside gets tameh, the inside is not tameh, that's only, says Rabbi Yehuda, where liquids touch the outside. Tameh liquids touch the outside. But if a sheretz touch the outside, okay, if sheretz touch the outside, a creepy crawly thing touch the outside, then it goes like this. If the interior was contaminated, nitma gaboy, the exterior is contaminated. Nitma gaboy, nitma toicha. But if the exterior was contaminated, its inside is tameh. In other words, the sheretz, it doesn't matter if it touched the inside or the outside, the entire thing, inside and outside, is tameh. The isal kedatin, if you hold, tumas mashkin l'tamei kalim di'oraisa, if you think that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the capacity of liquids to convey tumah to a utensil is biblical, mali nitma machmas mashkin, mali nitmas machmas sheretz, then what would the difference be? Why do I care if the outside is touched by a sheretz or the outside is touched by a liquid? If you're telling me that liquids are mitame midiaraisa, that liquids become tomei biblically, and biblically they have the power to convey tomei, so then what's the difference between a sheretz and a liquid. At the end of the day, they're both tamei and have the ability to convey tamei. So why is it by a liquid do you say that if it touches the outside, it's not strong enough to make the inside automatically tamei? And now we're almost done. Amar Rabbi Huda B'Shmuel, Chazar Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Chazar, he rolled back what he said before, and he concluded that in fact the capacity of tumas of liquids to be of tamei liquids to be metame utensils is only rabbinical in nature, and therefore he said by a sheretz we'll say that it even if it touches the outside it affects the inside. By liquids, since it's only rabbinical, it doesn't. If it touches the outside, it doesn't affect the inside. Ravina Amal Li'olam Loyhada. No, he held that liquids become tamei d'oraisa and they have the power to convey tumah d'oraisa. In this case, mashpin aboyim machmes yadayim. This is liquids that became tamei on account of being touched by tamei hands. This is the case of Noisa and Pigel, where the Kahanim's hands become tamei if they touch it rabbinically. There, we're talking about liquids that become tamei on machmas sheretz, that become tamei because of being touched by a sheretz. That's biblical completely. That's biblical, and therefore, in such a case, if it touches the outside, it even affects the inside. One more thing to go. Where are we saying that where things become tamei because they were touched by liquids that were tamei, right? And if it was touched by a sheretz, if it's touched on the outside, the inside becomes tamei. But if it's touched, and the rule is that if it's touched, right? And Rabbi Yehuda should have differentiated and learned it as follows. This that I say that if it touches the outside, it doesn't affect the inside. It's only where they had tumas yadayim. But liquids that became tamei because they were touched by a sheretz. Nitma toicha, nitma gaba. If it touches the inside, the outside becomes tamei. Nitma gaba, nitma toicha. And if the exterior was contaminated by being touched by liquids that were touched by sheretz, the inside should become tamei. You're right. Since the language of Rabbi Yehuda was not clear, let's go back to the first way we said that with regarding the power of liquids to convey tumah onto a utensil, that is only rabbinical in nature. And if it's rabbinical in nature, therefore, if it touches the outside, it doesn't metama the inside. But if it was touched, the liquids were touched by a sheretz, a sheretz is a different ballgame. Not liquids. If a sheretz touches the utensil, that could affect the outside, it affects the inside. Okay, everybody, thank you. We're up to a boiluhu.